the police. You're gone.
It was just some black apples. We won't be seeing that happen again.
Black apples.
I said bad ones. I didn't mean to say black. I meant bad.
When people think about workplace comedies from the late 2000s, one underrated title that deserves far more attention is The Promotion, directed by Steve Conrad. At first glance, it looks like a straightforward corporate rivalry story set inside a grocery store, but the film quietly transforms into a sharply observed satire about ambition, insecurity, masculinity, and the fragile egos that surface when opportunity knocks. Anchored by performances from Seann William Scott and John C. Reilly, the movie balances cringe-inducing humor with moments of emotional discomfort, making it more layered than many comedies of its era. The story centers on Doug Stauber, played by Seann William Scott, a man who has built his identity around being the dependable assistant manager of a Chicago supermarket. Doug isn't flashy, and he isn't particularly innovative, but he believes he has paid his dues. He shows up on time, follows corporate policy, and keeps his head down. For him, the grocery store is not just a job, it is the ladder he intends to climb. When he hears that the company plans to open a brand new branch in his own neighborhood, it feels like destiny aligning perfectly. His boss, portrayed by Fred Armisen, reinforces that belief by assuring Doug he is the top candidate to manage the new location. That promise becomes the fuel for Doug's expectations and, eventually, his unraveling. Doug's home life also plays into his sense of urgency. His wife, played by Jenna Fisher, represents stability and emotional grounding. She supports his ambition, but also reveals the subtle strain that his professional aspirations place on their relationship. Doug wants the promotion not just for prestige, but for validation. He wants to prove he is moving forward, that he is not stuck in place. The new store in his neighborhood symbolizes growth, adulthood, and control over his environment. It would mean a shorter commute, a higher salary, and a visible step up in status. In Doug's mind, the promotion is already his. That illusion shatters with the arrival of Richard Wellner, the affable Canadian newcomer played by John C. Reilly. Richard is polite, friendly, and seemingly harmless. He smiles often, speaks gently, and integrates into the workplace with ease. But beneath that warmth lies a competitive drive just as strong as Doug's. Richard also has his eye on the managerial position, and he is not shy about pursuing it. The tension between Doug and Richard doesn't explode immediately. Instead, it simmers. The film cleverly portrays how workplace rivalries often begin with small, almost invisible shifts. Longer conversations with the boss, subtle attempts to outperform a colleague, and carefully crafted displays of competence. As the competition escalates, the grocery store becomes a battleground disguised as a fluorescent-lit retail space. Everyday tasks, inventory checks, staff management, customer service, turn into opportunities for one-upmanship. Doug begins to feel threatened in ways he never anticipated. He has always believed seniority and loyalty would guarantee advancement, but Richard's presence challenges that assumption. Richard is proactive, willing to bend rules if necessary, and unafraid to position himself strategically in front of upper management. The humor in the film arises from this escalating desperation. Rather than broad slapstick, the comedy often leans into awkwardness and moral compromise. Doug starts making decisions that contradict his previous image as the responsible employee. He manipulates situations, spreads subtle misinformation, and even contemplates more aggressive tactics to undermine Richard. What makes these moments compelling is that they feel grounded. The film captures the psychological shift that happens when ambition turns into obsession. Doug isn't a villain. He's an insecure man afraid of losing what he believes he deserves. John C. Reilly's portrayal of Richard adds further complexity. Richard is not a stereotypical antagonist. He's charming, occasionally naive, and sometimes even sympathetic. Yet he's also calculating. His friendliness can feel strategic, and the line between sincerity and manipulation remains blurred. That ambiguity drives much of the film's tension. The audience is left questioning who truly deserves the promotion and whether the concept of deserving even applies in a corporate hierarchy driven by perception as much as performance. Supporting performances deepen the workplace environment. Bobby Cannavale and Lily Taylor contribute to the ensemble, portraying characters who populate the grocery store ecosystem. Their presence reinforces the idea that promotions do not occur in a vacuum. Every decision affects a chain of employees, each with their own ambitions and grievances. The store feels alive, not just as a setting, but as a microcosm of corporate America. One of the film's strengths lies in its tonal restraint. It avoids turning the rivalry into cartoonish sabotage, instead focusing on how small ethical compromises accumulate. Doug's behavior begins to strain his marriage. His conversations at home grow tense. His wife senses his anxiety and competitiveness. The promise of upward mobility starts to cost him emotional stability. Meanwhile, Richard faces his own pressures, revealing that he too has personal stakes tied to the job. This dual perspective prevents the film from reducing either character to a caricature. Director Steve Conrad approaches the material with a subtle hand. The pacing mirrors the slow burn of corporate competition. Rather than relying on explosive confrontations, the film builds discomfort gradually. Scenes often linger on awkward silences or forced smiles, emphasizing how professional politeness can mask hostility. The grocery store setting amplifies the absurdity. Amid aisles of cereal boxes and discount signs, two grown men wage psychological warfare over a managerial title that, in the grand scheme, feels almost trivial. That contrast between the mundane environment and the intensity of ambition creates much of the film's dark humor. Thematically, the movie explores the myth of meritocracy. Doug believes that tenure guarantees reward. Richard believes that initiative and charm can accelerate success. Both perspectives clash under the watchful eye of upper management, whose decisions seem influenced as much by image as by performance metrics. The film subtly critiques corporate structures that encourage competition while pretending to value teamwork. Employees are told to collaborate, yet only one can win the promotion. As the rivalry intensifies, the tactics grow riskier. Doug's attempts to sabotage Richard begin to backfire. His moral compass wavers, and the audience witnesses the erosion of his self-image. Moments that might have once felt beneath him become justifiable in his mind. That transformation is uncomfortable, but realistic. The promotion excels in portraying how ordinary individuals can rationalize questionable behavior when stakes feel high. At the same time, Richard's facade starts to crack. The film allows glimpses of his vulnerability. His friendliness sometimes masks insecurity. He, too, fears stagnation. This dual descent into competitiveness underscores the film's central irony. Both men risk losing more than they gain. The grocery store becomes less a place of employment and more a mirror reflecting their anxieties about adulthood, masculinity, and worth. Seann William Scott delivers one of his more restrained performances here. Known for broader comedic roles, he grounds Doug with sincerity. The frustration in his eyes, the forced smiles in meetings, and the defensive tone in conversations at home all contribute to a nuanced portrayal. John C. Reilly matches that energy with quiet intensity, making Richard simultaneously likable and threatening. Their dynamic drives the film's emotional core. As events spiral toward resolution, the film resists a simplistic payoff. Rather than presenting a triumphant victory for one character, it examines the costs of ambition. The outcome forces reflection on what success truly means. Is it the title, the salary, the validation from superiors? Or is it the preservation of integrity in relationships? The promotion does not preach, but it invites viewers to consider these questions through the consequences faced by its characters. By the time the credits roll, the grocery store feels like more than a workplace. It has become a stage for examining human behavior under pressure. The film's understated approach might have limited its mainstream impact upon release, but that same restraint gives it longevity. It captures a universal experience: the fear of being replaced, the temptation to compromise ethics for advancement, and the realization that professional competition can blur into personal conflict. The promotion stands as a sharp, character-driven comedy that blends humor with discomfort. It avoids exaggerated corporate satire and instead focuses on the quiet desperation that fuels rivalry. Through Doug and Richard's escalating battle, the film paints a portrait of ambition that is both relatable and cautionary. In a world where career milestones often define identity, this 2008 gem reminds viewers that the climb up the ladder can reveal as much about character as it does about capability.